welcome to this week's workshop. This week we released a video called How to Order Samples from Your Factory in China. Now, the whole idea of that video was to teach people about not just how to do samples, but what is the meaning behind the samples, all right? What I've learned from 13 years of going to China and dealing with hundreds of factories is that you gotta set a mindset as to what you are really trying to do. And oftentimes people think that sampling is about testing a product. Does it look good? Does it feel good? And that is very true. Sampling is there to make sure that your idea, your concept can come to reality through the factory that you have chosen. But what we fail to realize sometimes is that that sample has to be made by someone and some machines, right? So the deeper level to it, I call it the hidden layer, is that your samples are really there to test the factory's capability, okay? So let's start off as we usually do with, what is this channel all about, right? What are we really trying to do? And I'm trying to teach people how to become a supply chain expert. And I've taken all my years of experience and condensed it into a framework so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting, right? And I'm trying to help you to get there, okay? So when I look back, it all starts with a funnel of focus. And what you see here are the 7 steps to my framework, right? This is my methodology that I've sort of developed from 13 years of experience, okay? So if you follow these 7 steps and really understand what they are about, you're guaranteed to find a really great factory. And that factory, you can keep it for life. It becomes what I call an asset. As you grow and scale, the factory grows and scale. And it's almost like you become like Siamese twins, right? You're connected by the hip because each other is supporting each other. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right, so what we are looking at always is number 1. What is the mindset and intention here? Okay. Now, as we go through different videos on the channel, it will touch on all of these different 7 points. Okay, I never deviate from it. And what I want you to see is that for the sampling, it all starts with the mindset. Okay, so let's try and highlight what is our mindset. Okay, so today we're going to talk about number 1. Okay, we got to set a mindset and intention of what we're trying to do. And the next one here that it touches on is number 4, the production capability. Okay, number 1 and number 4, right? I've seen many times dealing with factories and also really dealing with clients is that when they ask for a sample, it's really to make sure the color is okay, right? Make sure the logo is okay. Make sure it looks cool, right? Make sure it looks fashionable. But from my end as the supply chain expert, what I'm looking for, and that's most critical, is the production system. So you would often hear in all of my videos about the hidden layer and what's beneath the surface, just like an iceberg, right? It's what you cannot see. And the truth about sampling is this: samples are made in a sample room. They're not made where there's bulk production. And what I mean by bulk production, it's not made on a production line with 20 or 25 different workers. When you place your order, then that's a different kettle of fish, right? Because then your order has different variables with different people working on different machines. But it's usually made in a sample room. Okay? Okay, so your samples, let's get some Sharpies. Your samples, right? Samples are made, I gotta do another video, right? So many ideas I have. Samples are made in a sample room, okay? Okay, and this sample room, you've got usually a master sampler maker, right? They call him the Shifu, right? That's Chinese for master, right? These are guys who have done like whatever industry it is, right? It could be shoes, it could be air conditioners, it could be home decor products, right? But usually there is a shifu or a master who understands how to make the patterns, right? If I want a shoe or a hat or a garment, I got to create a pattern, and then you cut the material based on that pattern, okay? So in the sample room, you've just got 1 or 2 people going in there making it. It looks good, it looks nice, it looks beautiful. That's what they do or have been doing for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. However, the sample, because it's done in the sample room, does not tell you anything about the production line, okay? So that's why in the video I say that the purpose of sampling is to verify production capability, what's beneath the surface, right? Okay, and it is our part to do our due diligence. So let's just make a note here as we go along that the samples are made in the sample room, okay? Let's go with green, okay? And that does not equal, right? That does not equal, that means does not equal, that does not equal the production capability, right? That does not equal the production capability of the factory. Okay? This is the point I'm trying to make. And I will get into an example of my watering cans that proves this, okay? All right, so that does not equal production capable. So we are testing, the sampling is to really test the factory's production capability. But what do I mean by production capability? I mean that the factory, yes, they will say we have machines, we've been doing this for, X amount of years. Could be 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 25 years, okay? But from my experience, there's so many different layers, the 7 steps, right, that really qualify a factory, okay? So production capability means, yes, you've got a good set of machines, but maybe you don't have great workers, okay? It could mean you have a great set of machines and a great set of workers, but maybe your sales agent has a really poor attitude. That's happened to me before too. And so your idea and your vision for your product, they can't completely interpret that and give it to the factory's engineers and production lines, okay? Communication is off, communication is poor. Some sales agents, they only are interested in getting the order. Why? Because the boss or the dalao ban, right? The dalao ban just means the factory boss, right? Right? Gives them a sales commission. A sales commission, right? So some of them are really only interested in what is the sales commission. Not all. There's some really great agents, right? But I'm just letting you know that it's sort of like a mixed bag, right? So some of them are only driven by the commission. And that comes from the ownership, because they're saying, hey, if we don't get sales, then we can't keep the factory alive. So the sad part about it is that they're not customer service. They don't make customer service a priority, right? They are more sales as a priority. So the feeling that you get is that they don't come across as genuinely wanting to help you. They are just genuinely wanting to get the order, okay? So when that happens, that is something that is a red flag for me in terms of production capability, okay? All right, because remember, the whole idea is that we are trying to build an asset. We are trying to build long-term relationships with suppliers that will then give us back a return of investment for the long term. Okay, makes sense? Like those factories that you develop real relationships with, not transactional, but relational, they will give you back so much more, right? Especially when times are really challenging for you and your business. Okay. So that's what I mean by production capability. Okay. And somebody can always say, yes, we can make the sample. Yes, it's going to look good. But you have to do your due diligence. Okay. So now let me tell you a little bit about my story. Okay. My story. So in 2019, 2020, what happened to Dwayne? In 2019, right? Going into 2020. Okay. I started my Amazon business. Woohoo! I started my Amazon business. Okay. And hey guys, side note, I digress, but I actually knew when the pandemic was coming before most of the world did. Why? Because we had started shipping containers out of China in January, February, March of 2020. And I remember our freight forwarder called me and said, Dwayne, if you have any containers, you got to get them out now because something's going on, and the local government for each city, each port is shutting down the ports. So do you have any containers? You got to reroute it to, I think it was like to Shenzhen, Yantian port, and we got to do it now. I was like, huh, what's going on? And then 2 weeks later, there's a situation in Wuhan and people are dying virus. Okay, anyway, I digress, sorry. So back in 2019-20, I started my Amazon business and I did my market research and I came up with a product to start off with. And it was this guy, right? The watering cans, okay? This is the same one I have on the YouTube thumbnail. Okay, so I want to show you that I still have it. It still has the original tag with the supplier. Okay. And what happened was everything was going great. Like I did really good market research. And when we brought the first order over to Amazon, man, it was selling like hotcakes. We were like going up and we were like almost number one, right? Like the top guy was like, huh, what's going on? Because we're getting sales like, I think the first order was 1,000 of these watering cans and it was unbelievable. I would wake up and you just see the Amazon icon going, order purchase, order purchase, order purchase. It was, you know, I would go out for, I remember I went out for lunch with my sister and we were having lunch and all I could see, order purchase, order. It was just unbelievable, right? And so I did not expect it to sell so fast. So I put in the second order. Okay. And that was like 2,000 cans, right? And then from the second order, we always do an AQL, which is a third-party quality inspection. And the first one passed, but it had some errors. The second one did not pass. And so the problem there was that it had chip paint around the, I don't know if you could see it on this one, but it had chip paint around the rims and the top, okay? And so when it failed, it went from being, this is unbelievable, to like, oh my gosh, this is like pure misery, right? Because it was selling and then at the same time we were like, no inventory because I could not accept the second order of cans. I knew that if based on the AQL, it had too many major defects, right? And if I accepted it, then my Amazon business would be sure to be shut down, okay? Now, guess what happened? The tail end of the first order had some defects too, right? And we did do an AQL. As I said, it wasn't a clean, you know, it wasn't like zero minor defects, zero major defects, but it was enough to be like borderline, okay? It passed, but it was enough to be borderline. And then Amazon shut us down. Too many complaints, too many rejects, or too many complaints coming back. So all of this happened at once. It was like independently, Amazon didn't know what was going on in China. China didn't know what was going on in Amazon, but the factory was the same. So, right? Now, that's why I say that anybody want to do business, they will do a good sample for you, right? Because they're only doing one or two. And so they will make sure, they will look at it. This is before they leave China. Your sales agent would make sure look at it and go, yeah, they're not going to send you a defective product or something that looks bad. If somebody sends you a sample that looks bad, you gotta find another one, right? Because there's no excuse for somebody making a custom sample that is missing some paint or whatever it may be, a missing logo or bad colors, okay? So yeah, Amazon shut us down and I lost a lot of money, and unfortunately we weren't able to catch up with this particular product, okay? So that is why I stress in many videos you will see the 7 steps, right? And I always focus on what's beneath the system, which is production capability, because they made a great sample, right? And we had a contract and everything. So the sample looked good, everything. But in terms of production capability, what I say, your due diligence to test the factory's production capability. I did a video call because obviously you couldn't travel to China, pandemic, right? But I did a video call and it checked all my boxes. I'm fairly thorough that way. What I did not check was the painting factory, the production capability of the painting factory. And so I thought it was all done in-house. And when we started getting back returns and defects, and when the Amazon account got shut down, I asked, who is inspecting it, right? Who is doing the quality control as we agreed upon in our contract? And it turns out that the factory that makes these watering cans, they're just a metal factory. So they would have their dies and they would stamp this out to give it the cylindrical shapes, and then somebody would weld it. And then they would take all of these unfinished or unpainted watering cans and send it to, or outsource it to, a paint factory. So the paint factory had to, hold it like this, or they had to put like a hook, a metal hook. So all of these missing paints on the rim and the rim is because the hook of the hook that's holding it as they spray it, right, left a mark, okay? And in some of them, if it was incomplete, that was it. It was getting packed and shipped, okay? So lesson learned on my part that production capability means the whole 9 yards, right? You got to check everything. You got to ask, okay, you're making this product and are you outsourcing it to anyone else, right? Okay, so that's my story there with Amazon, right? And when it got shut down, I was so sad because we had a winner there and we had no stock, could not replenish it, and lost sales. But hey, such is life, meaning that remember one thing is that all the failure that happens is really a teaching lesson. It's not a curse, it's a blessing, right? Life doesn't happen to you, it's happening for you. And so that's why I can tell you all these stories now. And hopefully you learn as we go on this journey together, okay? So test the sample. In the video, I said the sample is really here to test the sample, and you saw me at Bob's factory. Bob is the owner of the factory, Blessings Caps and Dongwon, and we've been doing business for maybe last 5 years or so, or 6, right? But test the sample, right? But beyond that, like the watering cans, need to test the factory and test the agent, okay? So in my case, 2 of those 3 worked for the watering cans, okay? Now, let's move on. Okay, so what do we do in terms of sampling strategies? What is our approach, right? So I started talking on the BOM, the BOM, right? So the BOM, if we look here, is the bill of materials. Okay, let me write this out. All right. Why don't let's use green again, right? So the BOM, which is this guy, is a bill of materials. Now, this is like one of my top tools in supply chain, because BOM, right? BOM. it will tell you everything. So if you look here, right, you will see that on our BOM, we've got a shoe. And by the way, make sure you check out the workshop video on how to find a fair price using AI, because in that one, I break down the BOM in the second half. So after 15 minutes or so, and I developed a ChatGPT prompt that will design this BOM for you. All you got to do is take photos of your product. So take about 4 from different angles, upload it to ChatGPT with the prompt, and it will generate this BOM for you. It's amazing, okay? So I won't go over the whole details of the BOM because it's in that video, but the BOM will identify all the different views, as you can see here. And each circle, I call it a balloon, points to a different feature of the shoe. And it will, in the bottom table here, it will list what is the name of each balloon and the material, okay? So the purpose of the BOM is to encapsulate all the technical specifications as much as possible visually in a layout so that you can see it and your factory can see it, right? There is no ambiguity. There's no like, oh, I thought this, I thought that, because everything should be here, okay? So even if something needs to be changed, then we could always change the photos, right? And we can mark it up. So let's go as an example. We can mark this up and say, hey, you know what? I want to change the logo, right? So instead of this logo, let's put the infinity logo. So you can mark it up and just do something like this, right? Maybe you need to generate a new BOM, right? But even if you did this and then sent it to your factory will say, oh, okay, I see the new logo, right? So they will already start thinking of what do they need to change in their manufacturing process to accommodate the new logos. All right, hope that makes sense. Okay, now what I did for today is I wanted to show another item. Okay, so I don't have one for the watering cans, but we're gonna look at this guy here. This guy is another home decor ornament. Okay, looks like that. It's a candle holder, right? So hopefully you can see this. And I made a BOM for this candle holder, okay? All right, and remember guys, there's a prompt for it in the other workshop video, okay? So let's put this here for a second, okay? So this is our candle holder, right? So this BOM, again, I took 4 photos, put it to the prompt, and it gave me all the different materials, right, from AI. If something is off, it's okay, you can change it, right? Now, let's say this is the item that we want to get a sample for, this candle holder. I want to give the factory this BOM because it has all the details, it has all the different materials, it has all the dimensions, it has all the specs, the diameters, and so on, okay? Now, there's also a revision letter box here, okay? So let me just move this so our overhead camera can show you clearly. So here you will see that there is a revision letter A, okay? And you will see that there's a revision box down here, A. So let's say, for example, you change the dimensions. You made it taller, you made it wider, right? Then this here will become revision letter B, right? So I'll just mark it. This is B. You put in the date, and what did you change? Height. Okay, something like that. All right, and by doing, right, DS, okay? Now, after everything is agreed upon and everybody confirms all the changes visually and on the BOM, then here is the approvals box, all right? This is the box that you want to sign and get your factory to sign it off, okay? Why? Because then that means that everybody knows what the game plan is going in, at least for the samples, and that there is no misinterpretation, okay? And if they go ahead and sign it off and the factory makes a sample, you get back the sample and something is off, like they didn't make it the right size, or they didn't make it the right diameter, or they didn't make it the right color, then you go back to the BOM and say, hey, but we agreed upon this, okay? And also, remember, you're testing, right? You're testing the sales agent ability to execute your idea using the BOM. So if you agreed upon it and there's a problem, then that's okay, because now it's saying to you, factory number one, that sales agent, they didn't quite understand, but we agreed upon it, we signed it off. Maybe they have a legitimate reason, maybe not. I don't know. But that's the beauty of sampling, is that you're testing the production capability. Okay? And why is this more important? Because when you go into production, this becomes the standard. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, but the main idea, I remember what I was going to say. The main idea is that if they make the sample and you've paid the sample fee for it, and they've made the sample, you get the sample back and it's wrong, then you need to ask them to make the sample again at their expense, not your expense, because you already paid the sample fee and they've agreed to make this according to your specifications, right? Some factories, they will rush the sample through, and then when they won't check it, and then they will say to you, oh, it's okay, now we understand it, and we'll correct it before bulk production comes through. No, don't do that, right? Don't do that, because you're testing the factory. They should have gone in it done the very first time, okay? With your clear instructions. But because they have not, it raises the question, are they able to follow instructions? Because if they can't do it for the sample, who's to say they won't do it or would be able to do it for mass production? I don't know. I just don't want to take that risk. Make sense? Okay, so what else is here? So sign the BOM, make sure to mutually agree. And then also, now that you have your BOM, you're going to give this to 7 to 11 different factories, okay, to get quotations, okay, 7 to 11 to get quotations, right? And then when you get the quotations, you will narrow down who's your top 3, right? Oh, by the way, that funnel of focus, right? I put a red box under, I don't know if you saw it in the beginning, it says 3. It means all of this, I don't know how it works, but it always funnels down to 3. If you start with 200, it will always narrow down to 3. Okay, that's why I say choose 7 to 11 factories, right, from different sources, and you show them all the BOM and they will quote you. Okay, and then from that, when you go through the 7 steps in the funnel, you will eventually get 3, and then that 3 you will then begin to ask samples for. Okay, so all 3 factories now, I suggest, this was step number 2 in the approach, is contact and get samples from 3 different factories. Don't just rely on one, because if it may feel good and the conversation may be good, and then they send you a sample that's like, not what you wanted, then what are you going to do? Because you don't have anybody else to compare with, right? So as I said in the video, $100 today could save you $10,000 later on. And I think when I bought this can, if I remember correctly, it was like $4.80 or $4.20 or something like that for a metal watering can, right? But the sample fee, let's say the sample fee was $100 or $50. Some people say, oh my gosh, it's $4.20 for this, but you're charging me $100. I'm not going to pay that, right? And they bypass the whole sampling process. But the reason why it's a lot more is because one person is making it, right? So one person has to go through the whole process, get the materials, put it in a die, cut it out, paint it, so on and so on, okay? So I know it's a little bit of an investment, but think of it as a tool, sampling as a tool to filter out good factories from bad factories, so you don't end up with me with a $10,000 loss. Okay, hope that makes sense. Okay, so choose 3 factories, and then next one is do not rush the sampling, right? We spoke about it earlier. If the factory is saying, oh, it's okay, I understand it now. No, I would go on to the next two, okay? Because you want somebody who is methodical and goes step by step. And so everything is organized before you have to pay that deposit and go into production, okay? Because then you have the confidence, right? This person is listening to you. This person is understanding you, right? This person is serious, right? You're going back and forth like a team, and it feels frictionless. Those are the best suppliers. You'll feel them, right? They're just frictionless. They're like always half a step ahead of you, and it's amazing feeling. Okay, now the last thing I wanted to talk about in our strategy is that your sample now becomes the standard for production. Okay, so let's move on. Sorry. Right? Is that now your sample let's go back to red. I like these colors. Okay, I think we can put this aside. Okay, your samples, or I should say your sample approved, okay, or approved sample, right? Your approved sample is now equal to, let's do blue, different colors. Your sample approved is now equal to your production standard. And this is hugely important, okay? What do I mean by production standard? You've just gone through the BOM, right? You've just gone through the BOM, you signed upon it, they've made the sample according to your specifications. That means you've signed and agreed to the colors, the sizes, the finishing, the packaging, exactly what it looks like, okay? This is now the standard. So you want them to make 3 samples. One, usually they make 2. One for them to keep as a reference, one to send to you for approval, right? And I'm saying, make sure you get the 3rd sample. The 3rd sample goes to your buying office in China. And all it means is that it's an approved sample, similar to the other 2. So there's 1, 2, 3 in total. But this no longer stays at the factory. This stays with somebody else outside the factory, okay? And it becomes the approved production sample. That means if you decide to place the order with them, that everything that's coming off that production line has to match this approved sample. Colors, sizes, finishing, no defective paint, all that stuff, right? Okay. And usually with a production standard, when they do your production, this production standard is on the production line. Why? Because when it stays on the production line, right, it goes onto the production line, right? Or you request, hey, keep this on the production line. Why? So that workers can see it. You want the workers, no excuses, right? You want the workers to see it. Because what happens, right, is that when they go into bulk production, you'll see people just zzz, zzz, depending on what the product is, right? So if it's like garments or caps or shoes, anything with a sewing machine, it's like zzz, zzz, it becomes mindless, right? Like they're almost like robots. The good ones will inspect, right? But sometimes you get 1 or 2 workers that they don't really pay attention, right? So if something goes wrong, you're taking on all the excuses. Hey, but in our contract, we agreed that when it's production time, this production standard remains on the shop floor on the production line. So if any workers get confused, was I supposed to sew or stick, right? Or glue? They can go back to this to see what it looks like, okay? All right, so this is for the workers to see, okay? So the reason why you have it is that if something goes wrong, if there's a discrepancy, you go back to the production standard. This is what we agreed upon. hey, factory, you finished the mass production, but the logo was not correct, right? Okay, who's at fault? Who's accountable? I think you are. Oh, no, that's not what we agreed upon. Oh, hold on. Here's the BOM signed, and also go back to the production standard, right? That's why I say keep one outside of the factory. Not that, in my experience, nobody was ever, at least not that I recall, dishonest. But if you send this to your independent person, your buying office, then for sure you know that your sample has not been, tainted with, or somebody has not done something to it. Okay, so we want to protect everything. So this one for the workers to see, and then this goes to the buying office. Okay, the buying office, I have a buying office. It just means somebody in China that manages all your purchases. Okay, but what happens if you don't have a buying office? You say, hey, Dwayne, I don't have a buying office. My network in China is not that great. So what do I do, right? That's okay. No worries, right? Because if you don't have a buying office, you got to start thinking, who else can I trust, right? So all you want is that this sample stays in China. You don't want to send it back to your home country, because then you got to pay extra DHL or FedEx charges and whatever else. So just leave this at your buying office. And then your buying office, if you don't have one, like a sales agent or representative, then who do you know? Could be your freight forwarder. Are you in good terms with your freight forwarder? Then just say, is it possible that we can send this to you, and can you hold it for me, right? Who else do you know? A different factory, right? So maybe you got a different SKU, right? A different factory, okay? This will be a good video to do, because when I'm in China, I like to make networks. Anybody that I meet and have some sort of connection with, they go in my phone, on the WeChat, and I put a note. Oh, I met this lady. You'll see on my phone, Sherry, help me get something. Help me translate, right? Different cities, okay? So maybe you met someone, right? Maybe you met someone friendly, right? You can send it to someone's house if they would allow you to, okay? But you just need it not to be in the factory, so that when your production, your mass production is finished, right? My suggestion again is that you then send that sample to a third. So now you're going to send this sample, right? Send it to a third party they call it AQL inspection. Okay. Okay, third party AQL inspection company. So AQL just means that you've hired an independent party to go to the factory to do a full-blown inspection. Okay, so there's different levels, but I'll do another video on AQLs, right? But I highly recommend that you always do a third-party inspection before the goods leave the factory in China. Okay, so that is pretty much the reason why we do sampling and a sample order strategy and what's involved. And hopefully I was able to break it down in a bit more detail today for you to see why a sample is not just about, does it look good? Does it feel good? Is the materials okay? It's all about checking, right? That sample is just a reflection of the factory's production capability. So I hope you enjoyed today's workshop video, and we try to do a teaching video every Tuesday and then release the workshop video for that teaching on a Thursday. Yep. And if you got any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Thanks again. And oh yeah, I forgot. Make sure you look at some of the other videos that I have up here on how to keep your on-time delivery in check. Or maybe it's like how to make sure that the production systems in your factory are going to be working well. Okay. So got a lot of different content now and a lot of different tools, right? Most of the videos, I try to do a worksheet that you can download for free and hopefully it helps you out. Okay. So sayonara. All right.